And welcome back to Sunday Square Off. This criminal trial has it all. Infidelity, a political who's who of witnesses. But at its core, the question of whether a watchdog we elected to protect us sold a vote to the highest bidder. Last week, a former Arizona regulator and his wife, a powerful water company owner, and a well-connected lobbyist went on trial in a bribery scandal. Opening statements in the trial were last week. Katie Campbell of the Arizona Capital-Times was in the courtroom. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you so much for having me.
So walk us through this cast of characters and the charges against them.
It's quite a cast. We have former Corporation Commissioner Gary Pierce, his wife Sherry Pierce, a very well-known Pinal County water utility owner George Johnson, and a well-known lobbyist Jim Norton. His ex-wife also plays a role in this.
And Gary Pierce is charged with what?
So he's essentially charged with accepting bribes in exchange for favorable votes while on the Corporation Commission for George Johnson.
How does his wife Sherry Pierce figure into this?
So allegedly, the Nortons created a firm, a consulting firm that did, whether you believe the defense or not, did work for George Johnson, and Sherry Pierce was employed by that firm and was paid by that firm, which the paychecks were coming from Johnson, and then they allegedly were funneled over to her husband. So it's quite a web.
Quite a web. And George Johnson, a pretty well-known water company owner in the Southeast Valley, who's had many troubles over the years.
Yes.
What did he want out of this?
So he
allegedly
he had two unfavorable decisions at the Corporation Commission. He was unhappy. He wanted something more, and he went to Gary Pierce for them. He wanted a rate hike, essentially, and the ability to pass his own income tax liability to his customers.
And lastly, Jim Norton, well-connected lobbyist, longtime friend from college of Governor Doug Ducey, who was not implicated in any of this. What was his role?
So he is also well connected to Gary Pierce as well as George Johnson. He's lobbied for Johnson for a long time. So he was this intermediary there. I suppose he allegedly stood to gain something as well, and he involved his wife ultimately.
Okay, so they have all pleaded not guilty.
Yes.
They rejected a plea deal.
They did.
They each have their own lawyer, but if you can sum up what the defense argument is.
So the defense's argument in opening statements kind of seemed to focus on pitting the government's narrative of the Pierces themselves against what they see as the reality, that there are these people driven by family and faith and service, that they were just doing what was right by the people. They also questioned the timeline the government came up with. Gary Pierce's first vote in favor of George Johnson came before his wife was employed. The other vote came after the payments stopped. So it's kind of a strange timeline there. The argument for how the money encouraged those votes is a little fluid, I guess, at this point. So they're really focusing on these things that they believe just do not add up.
And Gary Pierce, former Republican lawmaker, at the time he was the chairman of the Corporation Commission, which means he set the agenda. Questions about his relationships with APS, a lot going on there. There's also a star witness, Jim Norton's ex-wife,
yes.
Kelly Norton, an unindicted co-conspirator. What does she know about all of this?
So she was interviewed by federal agents about the larger case that this stemmed from. There is a greater investigation still going on here. And the second time she was interviewed, she came with her lawyer and apparently wanted to play ball over this bribery scheme that she was alleging occurred. She admitted her alleged role in this. I want to be very careful. And she revealed emails apparently and documentation. She also apparently talked to the wife of a current Corporation Commissioner, Bob Burns. She was like a mother figure to Kelly Norton, and so there's a lot of different players coming out in this. And
bigger picture for our viewers, we elect the 5 members of the Corporation Commission to protect us from water companies, other utilities that they go to the Corporation Commission to raise rates and do lots of other things that affect our wallets. What kind of pall has this cast over the Corporation Commission?
I mean, it's one of those things. When I was talking to folks before the trial, is no matter what the result is of this case, there already is, I guess, an exacerbation of people's feelings that there are corrupt politicians out there and that they could influence our system. And so it's really cast a shadow over the Corporation Commission. And there's already been a shadow cast in the past. There's been questions before. So this really serves to, I guess, confirm those feelings in a lot of people's minds.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Real quick, lastly, going to be a long trial. In federal court, you need the entire jury to vote for conviction.
Yes.
Is that what the defense is betting on, that it's a complicated case, as you just laid out, that the prosecution just can't deliver?
I imagine so. I guess that's what they're hoping for. I believe that the fact that they turned down those plea deals really says something. So everyone's got a tough road ahead. But yeah, they're looking for that one who maybe just can't buy it.
All right, Katie Campbell, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
When we come back, would you vote for a candidate who's also suing you? But first, a bizarre Twitter smackdown over whether Cindy McCain should be a U.S. Senator. Stay with us.